I'll order a beer.
Hal Jordan is broke. The greatest Green Lantern in the history of the Corps. A man who has patrolled sectors of the galaxy that don't even have names in human languages, owes money to locals in a small Midwestern farming town, and cannot pay it back. That detail should tell you everything about what kind of show HBO's Lanterns is going to be. This is not the bright, colorful space opera the Green Lantern name might suggest. This is a paranoia thriller, a murder mystery, a story about two space cops trying to figure out who in a remote American town is actually human and who is something else wearing a human face. The official Lanterns footage is here, and it is doing something genuinely unexpected for a DC property. It is committing to a tone instead of hedging. Gritty Midwestern atmosphere, dual timelines separated by a decade, a lead character who may be slowly turning into the most feared villain in the Corps' history without fully realizing it, and a supporting cast that includes Laura Linney playing a guardian of Oa, disguised as a local. Laura Linney in a Green Lantern show on HBO. That sentence alone should tell you this is not what anyone expected. Let's go through everything, because there is a tremendous amount of lore packed into this footage, and some of it requires context to fully land. The dual timeline structure is the first thing to establish because it shapes how every other detail in the footage should be understood. The past timeline lands around 2017. Hal Jordan as a veteran Lantern, acting as mentor to a younger, newly recruited John Stewart during a murder investigation in a remote Midwestern town. The present timeline lands around 2027, right before the events of Superman Man of Tomorrow, with John Stewart as a seasoned senior Lantern operating in the full DCU context. 10 years between the two threads. The show is using that gap to build organic history for both characters, rather than asking you to accept their competence on the basis of a single season of development. By the time John Stewart shows up in the present-day DCU, he has been doing this for a decade. You watched it happen. The interrogation scene is the one that has been generating the most discussion, and it deserves the full breakdown because it is genuinely clever. Hal is interrogating a local suspect he believes is an extraterrestrial in disguise. No alien scanner. No high-tech verification device. He uses pop culture trivia, specifically the 1970 Nebraska Cornhuskers National Championship and Harry Potter lore. The suspect correctly identifies Coach Bob Devaney, proving he was fed specific regional historical data. Then Hal asks about Harry Potter's school, and the suspect falters. Claims he does not read much, only watches movies. The logic of this is elegant once you understand it. The alien infiltrators were trained on specific local history to blend into a Midwestern farming town. Their handlers did exactly what a well-resourced intelligence operation would do. They gave their agents the information required to pass as locals in that specific community. What they missed is the passive, ubiquitous cultural absorption that happens to every human being just by existing in the world. Harry Potter was a global phenomenon for nearly 2 decades before 2017. You do not have to read the books or watch the movies to know the word Hogwarts. You absorb it through billboards, through conversations, through cultural osmosis. Any person actually living on Earth during that period would carry that information without effort or intention. The aliens knew Nebraska football because they studied it. They did not know Hogwarts because nobody thought to teach it. Hal Jordan, a man who has spent years hunting disguised shapeshifters across multiple solar systems, spotted that gap immediately because he knows exactly how infiltration preparation works and exactly where it tends to fail. The Manhunter situation requires some lore clarification because casual fans are going to see that word and think of John Johns immediately. The Manhunters referenced in Lanterns are something completely different and significantly older. Before the Guardians of Oa created the Green Lantern Corps and powered it with willpower and sentient beings, they built the Manhunters, an army of emotionless androids designed to enforce order across the universe through cold logical force. The problem was that cold logical force applied to the problem of eliminating evil eventually produced a conclusion. The only reliable way to eliminate evil from a sentient being is to eliminate the sentient being. The Manhunters glitched, not through malice, but through the specific kind of horror that perfect logic produces when it runs without compassion, and became one of the most dangerous threats in the universe. The Guardians disbanded them, or thought they did. In Lanterns, the Manhunters have been adaptant with the ability to shapeshift and hide among human populations. This transforms the cosmic threat into something claustrophobic and intimate. Sheriff Carey cannot tell who is human and who is a synthetic agent wearing a human face. The murder investigation at the center of the show is not just a crime, it is a containment problem. The horror is not a monster arriving from space. The horror is that the monster is already inside the house and looks exactly like your neighbor. Now let's talk about Hal Jordan, because the footage is building something around him that the comics readers are going to recognize with increasing dread as the season develops. In the comics, Hal Jordan's most famous arc is also his most devastating: the destruction of Coast City, the grief that broke him, and his eventual surrender to Parallax, the ancient fear entity that infected his willpower and transformed one of the greatest Lanterns in history into the Corps' most catastrophic villain. It is one of the foundational tragedies in DC mythology, and the Lanterns footage appears to be quietly, deliberately building toward it. The visual tell is the suit. In present-day footage, Hal's iconic green uniform has a weathered, faded quality. And here's the detail that the lore-aware viewer will catch immediately. It carries a slightly yellowish tint. In the Green Lantern emotional spectrum, yellow represents fear. Specifically, it represents the specific wavelength of emotion that green willpower is most vulnerable to. A Green Lantern's power ring cannot affect yellow objects. That is the classic weakness, the literal blind spot of willpower when confronted with fear. Hal Jordan's suit, looking yellow at the edges, is not a costume design choice. It is the show telling you something about the state of his willpower in the present timeline. Then, there are the secret visits to Sinestro. The Guardians of Oa are concerned, visibly, actively concerned, because Hal regularly visits Sinestro in his high-security prison cell. Sinestro is a disgraced former Lantern who discovered the power of fear, who built his own core around the Yellow Ring, who represents everything the Green Lantern philosophy is supposed to stand against. And Hal keeps going to see him, keeps having conversations with the one person in the universe most capable of articulating why fear is not just a weakness, but a perspective. The Guardians are grooming John Stewart to replace Hal. Hal knows it. And a man who feels his legacy slipping away, who is isolated from the institution that defined him, who keeps visiting a mentor in fear. That is a man being very carefully, very slowly, introduced to the possibility that willpower alone is not enough. The parallax theory is the most compelling long-game structure the show appears to be building toward. Hal Jordan's fall would not be a betrayal of the character. It would be the most faithful adaptation of his most significant comic arc. It would explain organically and tragically why John Stewart becomes the primary Lantern of the present-day DCU. He did not simply inherit the role because Hal aged out. He inherited it because Hal fell. And the show is giving you 10 years of partnership and mentorship between them, so that when the fall happens, it lands with the full weight of a relationship, rather than just a plot development. The economics of superheroism are something James Gunn's DCU has been genuinely interested in from its earliest stages, and Lanterns is doing something specific with it. The Guardians of Oa do not pay their Lanterns. There is no salary, no stipend, no earthly financial support for the people they equip with the most powerful weapons in the universe. Hal Jordan is broke in a way that is presented not as a character quirk, but as a structural reality of what it means to be chosen for this work. He owes people money, he cannot pay rent. He has sacrificed any version of financial stability to do a job that the organization giving him the job provides no compensation for. Sheriff Carey pointing out Hal's local debts is a moment of quiet, grounded humiliation for a man who carries the weight of an entire sector of the galaxy on his ring finger. Guy Gardner's situation is the explicit contrast. He is backed by Maxwell Lord, the tech billionaire, the corporate presence, and operates as part of a sponsored superhero team, the Justice Gang, as a corporate entity rather than an organic response to need. His suit looks different because it was designed by a board of directors for public relations purposes rather than for fighting alien threats. The branding logic overrides the utility logic. And yet, Guy Gardner wields a genuine power ring, which means whatever you think of his corporate backing or his abrasive personality, the ring chose him. The ring does not care about your PR strategy. It cares whether you can overcome great fear. You do not have to be a good person. You do not have to be a likable person. You have to be fearless in a way that the ring can recognize. The construct comparison is where the show's visual design is doing its most interesting character work. Hal is a test pilot. His constructs are direct, functional, fast, built for immediate impact. Simple shapes, practical tools. The constructs of someone whose profession required making fast decisions with incomplete information at high speed. John Stewart is an architect. His constructs are structural, built from the inside out, featuring load-bearing details and mechanical integrity that Hal's never have. When John builds something with his ring, it is not just the shape of the thing, it is the thing's internal logic, the reason it holds together rather than just the appearance of holding together. That distinction in construct style is the show's earliest visual argument for why John Stewart is going to be the better Lantern in the long run. Not because he is more fearless, because he understands structure. And structure, in a universe where the only limit is your imagination, is everything. Laura Linney as a guardian of Oa in human disguise is the casting choice that says more about the tone and ambition of this show than any plot summary could. The Guardians taking on local species appearances when evaluating candidates or inspecting sectors is established lore. They observe without alarming. They assess without revealing. Her repeated question to John Stewart, "Do you have fear? Are you afraid?" and his unwavering answer of "hell no" is the Corps' entrance exam stated in its simplest form. While Hal Jordan struggles with quiet creeping anxiety about his age and relevance, and the institution that formed him slowly deciding he is expendable, John Stewart looks a disguised cosmic ancient in the face and says no, without hesitation. That is why the Guardians are grooming him. That is why the ring will eventually be his to carry. What HBO's Lanterns is building is a show that uses superhero mythology to tell a story about age and legacy, and what happens when the institution that gave your life meaning starts replacing you. Hal Jordan is not failing because he is weak. He is being failed by a universe that needed him to be perfect for longer than any person can sustain perfection. The yellow at the edges of his suit is not a character flaw. It is the specific cost of carrying fear for years without anywhere to put it down. And somewhere in a maximum security prison, Sinestro is waiting for the next visit. Patient, knowing, understanding exactly how this story ends because he lived through his own version of it. So here is what I need from you. The Parallax arc. Do you want the show to commit to Hal's full villain turn, or do you want the redemption version where he pulls back from the edge at the last moment? And the Manhunter adaptation as shape-shifting infiltrators rather than open android army, does that feel like the right call for a prestige TV format? Or does it sacrifice too much of the source material? Drop everything in the comments, because Lanterns is coming, and I want to be building theories with you before the first episode drops.